how gluttony became the #1 of the 7 deadly sins. When the church fathers listed the 7 deadly sins, they put gluttony right beside lust and wrath. Why? Because it reveals something far darker than food. You see, gluttony is mentioned several times in scripture and even made the list of the 7 deadly sins. Yet most of us never feel convicted when we go back for seconds or we over-obsess about food. So what did the early church see that we're missing or maybe not understanding? I think that's a good question because here's where it gets deeper than food or appetite. Check this out. In 1995, there was a movie called Seven where detectives played by Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt walked into a dark, scary-looking apartment. The air was thick, rotten food everywhere, cans stacked high, flies buzzing, and at the center of it all, slumped over a table, is a man who's eaten himself to death. The scene is gluttony, one of the 7 deadly sins. For most people, that's what gluttony looks like, a 600-pound man literally eating himself to death. Hollywood turned this into shock value, a freak show, a cautionary tale about excess and overindulgence. But that's not what the early church really meant. If you hang tight, I'm going to explain to you exactly what the early church was trying to warn us about. They weren't talking about morbid obesity or the average American diet because obviously those didn't exist at that point. When they called gluttony deadly, they were describing something far more subtle, far more dangerous. So why did an ancient world fear it and we barely notice it today? In order to find out the answer, we must leave the 21st century mindset and slip into the Egyptian desert. There's a guy by the name Evagrius Ponticus. We're gonna call him Mr. E from here on out because no one has time for that, okay? He was a 4th century monk, sunburnt, starving, alone with his deep thoughts. He noticed every temptation began with the same whisper, comfort, right? It was all about comfort. He called them the 8 evil thoughts. And the first one was the one that started them all. It was gluttony. But his version of gluttony wasn't about overeating. It was about the mind's surrender to appetite. Mr. E, as we're calling him here, saw gluttony as a problem of the heart, not of the stomach. He saw it as something that came specifically from the soul. To him, every physical craving was tied to a spiritual one. When a monk broke his fast early or daydreamed about the next meal, Mr. E said it wasn't really hunger speaking. It was a deep-rooted fear. Fear that God wouldn't provide, fear that comfort might never come again. It was a scarcity mindset. Gluttony in his mind was the first surrender. The moment when trust in God gave way to trust in self. He wrote that once the body learns to obey every appetite, the mind follows. That's why gluttony came first in the list of evil thoughts, because if a person couldn't master the smallest desire, food, how could they ever hope to master lust, greed, or pride? This monk, Mr. E, believed appetite was training ground for holiness, and the monk who lost the battle would soon lose every other battle. And centuries later, the idea reached a pope. His name was Pope Gregory the Great. He refined the list and described pride as the queen of sins and gluttony as one of its generals. In his mind, appetite wasn't about food. It was about that first battle, the soul. He believed that unchecked desires dull conviction, and that's why gluttony sat beside lust, greed, and wrath. It was never about what was on the plate. It was about what rules your heart. And that's where it collides with our world today, because gluttony didn't die in the desert. It just got digital, it got convenient, and harder to recognize. Isn't it interesting that when we have some kind of excitement going on, maybe we get a raise at work, right? We get a promotion. Maybe something exciting is happening at home, right? Something is going on in our lives that is exciting. We lose weight. We seem to do really well with not being bothered by cravings or temptations. But the minute things get hectic and adversity hits, the first thing we resort to is usually food. So here's what I want to do. I want to show you some of the things that I believe are the most problematic when it comes to temptations and all these problems we have around food, and ultimately how we get to this thing of gluttony, right? So let's talk about fast food. And speaking about fast food, I want to speak about deceptive food marketing, okay? Fast food has probably some of the most deceptive food marketing because They want to get people through the door. So they have become incredibly good at fooling people with colors, smells, right? And oftentimes even how they present things. So think about this. If you're going down a street and you see 7 different fast food companies, one thing they have in common is that the vast majority of them have the color red and the color yellow to them. Why? Because these food marketers have realized that red and yellow actually cause people to become hungry and take action on that hunger. Think about Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A. All of these fast food companies have the same color to their marketing. They know what they're doing. This is the dark side of food marketing, and we fall for it because, let's face it, we're going down that street, we look over, we're a little hungry. What's the first thing that we want to do? Especially if the day is hectic, if there's adversity going on, maybe we just got into an argument, maybe our boss is barking orders and we feel a little stressed. The first thing we tend to do is want to alleviate that, right, through fast food. Fast food secretes dopamine, and it is a very easy and safe way to do that. But then, of course, on the back end of things, we get in trouble when we overconsume fast food. And so these companies know exactly what they're doing. They spend millions of dollars marketing to our brain so that we can take those actions. Second to that is food therapy, which is mitigating emotions, right? Think about the time where you had a discussion, you had a disappointment, and the first thing you did was mitigate emotions through food, right? This is what I call food therapy. And we have become really good at it. We utilize food in ways in where it's not just to satisfy physical hunger, but it's actually to basically secrete that dopamine that makes us feel good so that we can get along in life. We use it as a crutch. We use it as a way to calm our nerves down. And it gets people in lots and lots of trouble, especially when you don't realize that you are reacting to food, not from a way, not for the reason of nourishment, but instead to actually mitigate your emotions. The third is the snacking obsession, right? This has to do more with boredom or managing anxiety. I know many people that come on my program, some don't even realize that they're constantly snacking throughout the day. We call this subconscious snacking. And this is the thing that, you know, we've gotten so used to reaching for food and just putting things in our mouth while we're doing another activity that we don't even realize we're doing it. And sometimes when people start to actually take notice of these things, they realize they're snacking 3-4 times a day. And when you first ask them, how many meals do you have a day? They'll tell you, oh, I only eat once a day or twice a day. But what they're skipping is actually all that snacking they're doing to control boredom and oftentimes to manage anxiety. Fourth in this list is engineered foods, right? And so engineered foods, we talk about this concept in food engineering called bliss factor. And the bliss factor is the perfect combination of salt and sugar. When they hit your palate, you can't stop. You keep going back for more and more and more. The perfect example of this is ice cream, right? When was the last time you had just one scoop of ice cream, right? You always want the second and third. I don't know about you, but anytime I just try a little bit of ice cream, my brain lights up and I can't stop, right? This is what they call food engineering. They engineer these flavors so that you can continue coming back for more and more. And last but not least is alcohol. The liquid poison is a depressant. It dulls our discipline muscle and it wrecks our digestive system, our brain. It slows us down. It throws inhibitions out the window. In other words, if you were on some kind of nutrition plan, you were disciplining yourself, the minute you drink alcohol, what happens is the next thing is you want to go eat, right? It spikes a ton of insulin and it just creates a mess, right? I tell people all the time, if you can get rid of that poison, that is one of the best things you'll ever do for your health. Regardless of the tips you try, change won't last unless you understand why you keep falling back. And that's what we cover in this next video here, how to build extreme Christian discipline with a scientifically proven method. I hope you enjoyed this video. More importantly, I hope you take action. May the Lord bless you and keep you until the next time.